Hey, how's it going? Of course, happy to set up time, but you seemed upset. What's going on? Yeah, in our training session. Yeah, as a manager, it's important not just to give feedback, but to get it. Why do you think you're not cut out to be a manager? No, it is completely natural to get feedback and not like it. But tell me more. Okay. So what's your response? Okay. Now, so when they came to you and said that your nighttime emails were stressing them out, it's okay. So how long has it been going on? Okay. And I get it, because I get it. When it's the way that you've been working and in the way that people worked with you, then it can feel natural and like it's part of it. But the one thing, if you remember me saying this, is first of all, when you get feedback, it is really a very good thing. Okay. It is 99.99% of the time a very good thing, because it shows that they trust you to come to you, especially come to you directly and not in an anonymous way, but come to you and tell you something. And especially in this, you've worked with them for a long time. And so they likely thought about it a lot before, like, should I really reach out? Like, and exactly what we talked about is having a meeting with your team and talk about it and saying, as a manager, yeah, it's not just for me to give feedback. I want to hear it as well, and I will take it in. But it's a lot easier to say that than to actually do it. And it's so important to realize that when you get that feedback, it's natural to feel, yeah. And again, especially if it's something you're used to and it's your habit and you're sending things. So I think, again, it's generally is just recognizing pretty much every piece of feedback you get, employees are really going to stress out about it before they come to you. And so again, just recognizing that when they do, it really is a sign of trust. And often it's a conversation back and forth. And sometimes your team members, or when they say something, that may not just be them. That may be what other people are thinking. And it's a hard part of a manager, because if everyone worked the same way that you did, it'd be a lot easier to manage. But that's not the realities of being a manager. But it doesn't mean that you're not cut out to be one. It just means sometimes it's thinking about things and realizing, because work does have a real impact on how we live. Yeah, look, if you thought about this, again, yeah, you thought about this long after the person said it. And again, they're not bringing this up to try to bring you down or criticize like you or the way you work. They're talking about how it impacts them. Because for your team members, yeah, and you may be able to get evening emails, like late evening emails and things like that, and think nothing else of it, or you shut down your phone. But for team members, there's often this power dynamic, and so they don't know what's expected, allowed, all of those things. Especially at work, if it feels like you get rewarded based on speed. Like if you're the first to reply first. And so team members may feel if they know or expect to get things from you at night, then all of a sudden they're at home and they're not recharging. They're looking at their phone because they're worried about missing something. And so the impact that can have is like, yeah, you may have a thought and just get it off in the moment, and you may think this is intended for them to read tomorrow, but that team member may receive it quite differently. Like they may look at it and all of a sudden they're thinking about it, and their thoughts aren't just, what do I have to do about this work-wise, but how does my manager feel about me? But it's human emotion, especially in that power dynamic, the people on the receiving end. And so, but as a manager, you have choices, like unless there's some policy or things like that. And we don't have an official policy or IT things, but generally the recommendation is to think about when you're sending messages, we do have IT technology to like on Slack or emails or whatever to time it to go out the next day. And it's not a have to. It's not why should you have to do that. It's more of a thought of, you have to, with your choices, I don't want to say there's consequences to everything you do, because it's not like a, child thing, but when you choose to send those, you may have team members that do that. They look at their phones, and you can help that a bit by talking and saying, okay, please feel free to shut down if you want to check it briefly or have things like that. But it's really hard often for your team members, especially if they get a flurry of messages off hours, to be able to do that. And it can just feel differently coming from you. And so thinking about as a leader, how do I want my team to show up? And so do I want my team to be looking at a message at 10:30 and thinking about it and losing sleep over it and come to bed the next day not having slept as much? Or do I want them to be able to come the next day and they see the message at 9 a.m. They've been able to do whatever the night before, and they can react to that then, and then they've had a full night's sleep. And I get that it's in an ideal world, and there may be exceptions to it. But the more that we use technology only for things like sending things after hours, it can have it where team members really feel always available. And it's important feedback to think about what's that middle ground. But it's not a matter of all of a sudden, like, I'm never emailing my team members, or I'm never going to work with that person. It really is, with feedback in particular, is thinking about what can I do? And so you could say, I'm not doing anything about it and not deal with it. You could say, I'm not doing anything about it and talk to your team about it. You can say, okay, then that's fine. I'm not sending messages anymore. Or you can continue the conversation, including in a team environment. And you can, no, in a team environment, I wouldn't point to the person and say this person raised it, but I would say, thinking about the topic of communications, we have work that we want to have done, but we also want people to be able to disconnect. So how can we do that? Well, and it's having a conversation about it. It doesn't mean it's solved in that meeting, but it's talking about real things, like thinking about times that you have really needed something, like if it's an actual emergency. But just talking to the team, to seeing the impact of that. And so, yeah, because it is possible others feel that way. And so when you get that feedback, it can be thinking about what's that next conversation to be had. Is it a follow-up with that team member? A huge thing to say when someone gives you the feedback is thank you. No, it's not just, I don't think it sounds routine if you say that every time when someone gives feedback. It does if you're like, thank you, and move on. But if you say genuinely, especially the first time you're hearing this, you know what, thank you. And you may have thought a lot before bringing that to my attention, but I appreciate it. And I want to think and talk to the team overall about it. I won't tell them who brought this up, but it's a really important conversation that honestly, I probably wouldn't have thought to have if you hadn't raised that. Yeah, and that can be the next step. I'm happy to talk about any type of feedback that you get, but just know, as a human emotion, it's really hard sometimes to hear someone say something that about your working style that they don't care for, and it can feel really personal. And that's how it feels to team members often when you're giving the feedback to them. So as a manager, it can help you when you get feedback. It can sometimes help you rethink how you give feedback and work with others. But if you use all of it with the intention to grow and create a work environment where we are driving performance without driving people out the door while doing so, that's what we want. Yes. No, I haven't trademarked that, but maybe that's what I'll do after this call. Okay. Well, I'm glad it's helpful. Have the conversation. I'm here. I'm always here, but I'm happy to talk about that.